Welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to be talking about The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky and why I think you should read it if you haven't already. This book was released in 19. I wish this book was released in the 1900s. Then maybe we'd have some interviews with Dostoevsky, and that would be really cool. This book was released in 1868 to 1869 in the Russian Messenger. Much like how Crime and Punishment came out in installments, this book also came out in installments, and then it was put together. This book itself is about 656 pages, so it is a long read. It's not quite as long as the Brothers Karamazov or Devils or Demons, depending on your translation, but it's a fantastic read. I'm going to give you guys some personal reasons on why I think you guys should read this book after I go over a couple words on the plot, and I'll also provide 3 film adaptations that I think are absolutely beautiful and pair well with this book. So a couple words on the plot. The Idiot is one of Fyodor Dostoevsky's most philosophical and morally complex novels, centering on Prince Lev Mushkin, a kind-hearted and simple man who returns to Russia after receiving treatment for epilepsy in Switzerland. Mushkin's innocence and goodness, however, make him a target in a society rife with greed, cynicism, and moral decay. The novel explores themes of love, death, beauty, and the conflict between good and evil, often through the prince's interactions with other characters, such as the manipulative Natasha Filipovna and the conflicted Rogoznin. Mishkin's virtuous nature clashes with the darkness of the world around him, ultimately leading to tragic outcomes. Throughout The Idiot, Dostoevsky delves into existential and spiritual questions about the nature of suffering and the possibility of redemption. So, that gives you guys kind of a brief summary of what the plot is about. A couple words on what I stated there. So, when Mushkin comes back from Switzerland for getting treated for epilepsy, this is actually a reflection of Dostoevsky's own life. So in 1849, Dostoevsky was sentenced to death, and he was put out in a mock execution where they basically lifted their rifles up at him. He thought he was about to die. He thought he was facing immediate death, and they just like fired blanks or fired into the sky or something, and they didn't kill him. And then he was forced into a Siberian labor camp where he spent quite a bit of time. So that experience gave him epilepsy, and he dealt with that for the rest of his life. Now, I can make a whole video on Dostoevsky's relationship with his epilepsy, but it's interesting that he reflects that in the character of Prince Mushkin here. He reflects a lot of his own qualities, I think, through Mushkin, and Mushkin is actually a character that eventually develops into Alyosha, I believe, in the Brothers Karamazov. I think this was Dostoevsky kind of playing with this Christ-like character. He was playing with this character, and then eventually he evolved into Alyosha, which we see in the Brothers Karamazov. I'll make a video on that eventually, too, because I think that's his best work. But The Idiot is also fantastic. I find a lot of people, they're kind of split on it. Some people absolutely love this book, and some people find it like the worst Dostoevsky novel, and I don't understand that. I think it's because it's mostly conversations. A lot of the conversations take their time to play out. There's not a ton of action in this book. It's not like Crime and Punishment where you have that big action sequence. Not big action. I'd make that sound like there's cars flipping over in St. Petersburg or something. But there's that violent sequence in the beginning of Crime and Punishment, and even in Brothers Karamazov, there's some, eccentric sequences, whereas in The Prince, or in The Idiot, the Prince is very low-key, and a lot of his adventures are pretty low-key for the most part. It's a lot of conversations, and it's a lot of, philosophical debates and stuff like that. But I find that incredibly interesting, and that's why I think I love this book so much. So a couple film adaptations that I think go perfectly with this book, because I can't really recommend you a book to go with The Idiot. There's not really any books like it. I could tell you to read all of the other Fyodor Dostoevsky novels, but that wouldn't really be much help. I'll eventually make a full reading guide to Dostoevsky and in what order I would read his books. That'll come out soon. I've already done one for Nietzsche, so I'll do one for Dostoevsky as well. But the film adaptations that I think are fantastic of The Idiot are the 1951 version. So this was directed by Akira Kurosawa, who, in my opinion, I think he's the greatest director of all time. If I had to separate my biases and separate my subjective view, which you can never do when you're looking at art. There's always objectivity and subjectivity kind of blended together. So you can never fully give an unbiased take. But if I had to kind of unbiasedly rank who I think the greatest director to ever live is, it's Akira Kurosawa. 100%. You look at his output and his catalog, and he's made masterpieces across 4 or 5 different decades. It's a tremendous career, and The Idiot is one of his most underrated films because he has about 20 masterpieces that are better than this film. But this film's still fantastic. I highly recommend it. It's probably the most psychological take on the story. The next film that I'll mention is the 1958 version, which I love for its acting. This was directed by Ivan Previev, and this film has some of the best acting I've ever seen in my life. You got to watch Russian films, man. Those Russians can freaking act, and in this film, the acting from top to bottom, every single person in the cast is fantastic. I highly recommend the 1958 version of The Idiot as well. And lastly, the 2003 version. Now, this is a mini-series. It's 10 episodes long, so it's the most faithful adaptation. It takes its time to play the story out. The acting in it is tremendous. The set pieces are fantastic. It was directed by Vladimir Borkto, and I highly recommend the 2003 version as well. I know it's a bit longer. It's 10 hours long, but it's a little bit more accessible because it's not in black and white. It still is in Russian, but you can get over subtitles. I'm sure you can. If you're reading Dostoevsky, I don't know why reading subtitles in a film would be an issue for you. But what else do I want to say about this novel? It's one of my favorite Dostoevsky novels. I think it's in my top 5. I still put Crime and Punishment and Brothers Karamazov, obviously, above everything else. And maybe I still think Notes from Underground is slightly better just because I really connect with it and it got me out of a dark place. But The Idiot was one of those reads where I really learned a lot about how characters should talk to each other. Now, I don't think every single writer can write like Dostoevsky. In fact, I've really never come across a writer who can write dialogue like Dostoevsky, but I learned a lot about writing dialogue from reading this book. The conversations that are had between all the characters are so dynamic and interesting, and that really is what propels the story forward. The fact that you can read a 600-700 page book and have it feel so captivating, and you just want to keep turning pages, and it's just all dialogue. There's nothing else but dialogue. It's fantastic. And I'm not saying that there's nothing else that happens in the story. There are other things that happen within this book, but I don't want to spoil them. But it's mostly just conversations, and there's some of the greatest conversations I've ever had the privilege to read about. So I highly, highly recommend The Idiot. Pair it with those beautiful film adaptations if you can go out and find them. And yeah, come back to this video. Let me know what you thought about the book, if I did convince you to read it. If you're watching this video and you've already read The Idiot, let me know down below. What are your favorite parts of the book? Try not to spoil it for anybody who hasn't read it, but what are your favorite parts of the book? Do you have any special memories with The Idiot? And yeah, that's all that I have to say today. Please go out and read this book if you haven't. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends. It helps boost this channel and the algorithm. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.